Yeah. My name is Kenneth Edwards. I'll give you a background on myself. I'm the state legislative director for SMART Union, which is what the United Transportation Union used to be. Now we're SMART, the Sheet Metal Air Rail Transportation Union. And this particular presentation is going to focus on my family, the Edwards family, and the history of the C&O in Miami County. So it's the parallel lines in Miami County history, the Edwards family, and the C&O Railroad. There's a map of the original, or of the C&O Railroad. Let's see here. And the C&O Railroad originated, and you can see this, in 1837 in this area here in Virginia, which was primarily to haul the coal from the coal mines to the ports. And that was where it got its origins. And then eventually, as time went on, it went outward. And that's a blow up of that map, which shows where we're at right here. And see over here, parallel line that ends up being the Monon, and we'll talk about that later, and that ends up being why the C&O pulled out of group. Here's where we go. I'm fifth generation. I'm fifth generation railroader. I've got 27 years of service on the railroad. Our family has a tradition of railroading. And this is my great grandfather, Ottawa Hopper. You might recognize the name. The descendants have the optometrist business here in town. And if you remember, or if any of you have been to athletic events, there was an award named after his son. Let's see, get the special effects going again here. The son, Raymond Hopper. And there was this isn't the brew depot, but this is the style back in 1908 that the Chesapeake in Ohio used for their depots. This would have been the type of locomotive that they would have used back in those days. Steam locomotive. Through flood there, 1913. The newspaper article that I read there concerning this said that a gentleman operated a handcart 40 miles to come into the flood zone there to help out. And not cited in the article, but passed down in railroad lore that the terminal superintendent was quoted to say, "We darn near lost a $40 handcart." All right, this is the same place now. This is what it looks like with no water on it, and there's the streetcars that we used to have right there.
That's in Urban, isn't it?
Yep, it is. Through C&O diesel shops used to employ hundreds of people. And the thing about diesel locomotive, or I'm sorry, this says diesel, but it should say these were not the diesel shops yet. The thing about diesel compared to steam, the steam locomotives were very heavy in maintenance. They had to be maintained. The boilers had to be completely removed out of them, and it was very manpower heavy. So there was hundreds of people employed in this area, just in C&O shops. Okay, in 1917, my great-grandfather, Leslie Stormy Edwards, hired in, and we're not for sure what date it was, but it was around 1917, and just to be factual, we don't have any pictures of him either, so this is a picture that I found on the internet, but this would give what he would have looked like back then. But this is an actual picture of the through ticket office back in 1917. And these are what the steam locomotives from that era what it looked like. They were called the Chesapeakes. And they had improved them quite a bit so they could carry more tonnage. Quick.
Do you have any kind of knowledge of how much horsepower these steam locomotives?
Yeah, but I'm not going to bore everybody with that.
No.
Yeah. Okay, 1933, the C&O launches one of the most successful advertisement campaigns in history to market their air-conditioned passenger car. It was "Sleep Like a Kitten" was what they used Chessie the cat for. Story behind this particular picture: it was purchased for $5 off of an artist by an employee of the president of the C&O who thought that this would be a good thing to use for their marketing. And it first appeared in September 1933 in Fortune magazine, and by 1934 this particular ad had appeared in over 40,000 print publications in 1 year. And also in 1934, Ottawa Hopper, that we showed earlier, was killed in a train accident in Griffith, Indiana. He was on duty, and he stepped back in front of a moving train that ran him over. When you read through some of these old newspaper articles, it's pretty graphic, but it says in there the victim's head was badly crushed and almost decapitated. It's down in there, it says that. So that was the end of that era. But the new era began, which was Stormy's son, Otto, my grandfather. And there's a picture of him in 1940 when he hired in. This must have been the job that he had at the gas station. You see his belt there. He's working at the gas station. And in 1939, the Chessie advertising campaign is still going quite strong. Then around that time, the Chessie mascot family expanded for their advertisements. This is Peak, Chessie, Nip, and Tuck. And one of the things that you'll notice here is that when they use these ads, they're in a sleeper car, passenger car, and they always use the number 9. So the only thing I can figure without having found it out, this is all speculation, is the 9 lives of a cat. That's why they use the number 9. And during World War II, again, the Chessie used this advertisement campaign. Pete went to war, and he's got a letter there from Chessie, and thank God it doesn't say "Dear John," it says "Dear Pete" on it. And this is their the C&O calendar, 1945, is Peak at war. So they used the patriotism that was going on at the time of World War II. Here in Peru, here's a copy of a letter that was addressed to all C&O employees, and it thanks them for their part of the war effort. Meanwhile, Pete returns home as a decorated war hero, and again, the number 9, they're in a sleeper. Nip and Tuck are glad to see their father home, and there's all his war gear up in the hammock, and of course there's Chessie in her position there, and he's got the bandage on his leg representing the injured war hero that came home. Okay, we talked about dieselization. The C&O was the last major railroad to convert over to dieselizing their steam locomotives, and the reason was that they hauled so much coal that they stayed with coal because the steam engines, obviously, you fed coal into them, and that's what made them go. So they stayed loyal to their coal customers. But in 1949, they started to transition to diesel engines, and then there's a article from the Peru paper at the time talking about how the C&O got their first diesel engines, and then there's a picture of it right there. So 1950, here's the map of what the C&O looked like. Of course, they expanded westward, and that parallel line that I talked about here, the loan on there, it's not part of the C&O system, but it goes up through, this was the line that came out of Peru. It operated south to Cheviot Yards in Cincinnati and north to Chicago. And this is a picture of my grandfather, Ottawa Hopper. We'll move ahead to 1960. Stormy Edwards passed away, and there's his at the age of 74, and there's his obituary. And at the same time, the C&O 7289 was donated to the city of Peru, and it ended up in West City Park. If people remember that one. 1963, the C&O acquired the B&O Railroad, financial operations of the C&O, of the B&O Railroad, but they did not actually take it over and take over the name for loyalty purposes to the B&O employees. And again, this is the lines, and then there's the LN is around there somewhere. 1964. That's when my father, K.R. Edwards, hired in, and there's SD35 diesel there that came out that year, and that would have been one of the engines that he rode on. In 1972, they completed the merger that they did with the B&O and also the Western Maryland, and the C&O became the Chessie system. I'm sure everybody remembers the famous Chessie cat. So Chessie, again, is her image is on the railroad. 1977, I don't know if anybody remembers this, when the Chessie Steam Special came through Peru. There's a picture of it going through the yards there by the yard office. Should be right around there. And there's yours truly right there, having a good time. There's my mother right there, and she's sitting right there. Our cousins are right there. My grandma is, I think, right there. And no presentation about our family and our heritage and railroading would be complete without a picture of my grandfather, Irvin Bradshaw. I don't know, you might remember him. He was the one with the epic suntan from Miller's Pool, and there he is right there, proud as can be. And this guy is definitely violating safety rules with his flip-flops on, no steel-toed boots there on the nose of an engine. So. November 1st, 1980, the Chessie system becomes CSX, and this was the beginning of the end of the C&O Railroad leaving Peru. And as you can see, here is all the areas that they 1981, my grandfather, Ottawa Edwards, retires with 41 years of service, and this is from his last day of work. There's my dad, Otto, and you may recognize him. That's his uniform behind you there. And if you've ever eaten at the Siding restaurant, that was his uniform that was on display in the mannequin there for years. Now that mannequin has been donated to my office down in Indianapolis. Okay, like I said, there's his last run in 1981 with all the officers there, and I have to share this with you since I did that the month before. There's a picture of him enjoying Pink Floyd for the first time. So I really enjoyed that picture. And that is a fact. That somebody said, that's not true. That is true. I think it was the wall. Okay, 1986, sad day here in Peru. It was the last freight train left. Passenger service remained, but the last freight train operating for Peru left. And there's a picture of my father. 1990, that's where I come in the picture. I hired it. There was obviously no place to work besides the NS here in Miami County, so I hired in Lafayette on the old Monon, old L&N. And then there's a picture of myself and my father, and he is known as, to his grandchildren, as Grumpy. So, there you go. If you know anything about the old Grumpy cat on the... So that's apropos there. But that's, hopefully I got through those. What time? We have time?
20 after.
Yeah. So, okay. So anyway, didn't have time to get into all the specifics. I wish I could bore my own self with all the traction and the tonnage and all that other stuff, but yeah, it's all available. But that's kind of a quick run through of the parallel progression in time of our family and the C&O Railroad here in Miami County. So if we have time, I guess we got a little bit of time, I can take questions if anybody has them, maybe be able to answer them.
What's the foreseeable future for Amtrak, for instance, wanting more, asking Congress to have more rail to visit different communities, reach out, and what's the future for Amtrak?
Well,
And what about the safety issue like Hoboken and stuff
Well,
like that?
let's do one thing at a time. Amtrak is a publicly funded entity, so it all depends on being funded by taxpayer money. So there has to be a political will. There's a will amongst us, obviously, being a railroader and going to depend on railroad retirement when I retire. My mother's sitting here. She's going to be depending on, or she depends on railroad retirement every month. My friend Jeff Douglas here, when he retires, he's going to be dependent on railroad retirement. So Amtrak employees make up 10% of what gets paid into railroad retirement. So obviously if we can't keep that afloat and keep that going, then that's going to be a 10% cut in our retirement. So we've got a big stake just in, for our own people to keep Amtrak afloat. But as far as serving the community goes, it's invaluable. I mean, I wish I could do a whole presentation on the history of passenger rail. The C&O used to have passenger up until 1971. All railroads were required by law to have passenger service, and they almost all went bankrupt. So in 1971, Congress passed a law and they created Amtrak. So it all flows from that. It has its genesis in that, but it's all depending on the will of Congress to fund it. And the thing is, it's never going to be a profit maker. And so that's what they don't like about it, because they want to, I call it profitizing, but you could call it privatizing is what they like to call it, but it's profitized. They want to profitize it. There's really there's not profits to be made. And a direct opponent of Amtrak is the airline industries. They would rather have these, where Amtrak thrives in the Northeast Corridor, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., New York City, Baltimore, where the trains are heavy. They would rather have you flying. And so they spend a lot of money lobbying Congress to defund that method of transporting people back. So, but the thing about Hoboken, we don't know what happened yet. Some of our people are on the scene. I used to be a train crash investigator with the NTSB, or working with the NTSB from our organization, and we've got people there. Nobody knows exactly what happened. They won't even release the report for at least a year, probably 2 years. But one thing is for certain: if they had 2 people up in that cab, that accident would not happen. So that's one of the things that we're working on legislatively, is passing laws to have a minimum of 2 people in a cab.
The equipment on Amtrak is deplorable. Have you ridden Amtrak lately?
Yeah. Well,
The cars and the sewage issues, and it's just, there's a lot of ridership there. It looks like they're making money. I might be wrong.
well, I can speak for the run that goes out of Lafayette to or actually it goes from Indianapolis to Chicago, the Hoosier State, because I spent 2 years trying to get that funded because due to a federal law that went into effect, the state has to fund that particular run now, and it got profitized to the Iowa Pacific Holdings. They took over that run, and if you're talking about the equipment, all that equipment is equipment that basically was junk equipment that they put a fresh coat of paint on and said, here you go, and it looks good and everything, but it failed the first few braking tests and stuff like that. So the equipment part of it, you know, like I said, you just need a will to get funded, and I think that people will go. America has a love affair with their automobiles. So to say you're going to go somewhere but you're not going to take your car along with you is kind of a hard sell. But I will tell you this, like going to Chicago, you'll spend more in parking your car up there than you would for your ticket. And the ride is just enjoyable. I mean, you're not worried about traffic, you're not worried, you know, you just go up there and get up, you can get off. You're right there downtown Chicago, do what you want to do, then you can take the train back home. So, I mean, it's just a matter of getting people on there and getting them to experience it, and I think we could grow it here in this area.
Well, if there's no demand, it's done.
We have to grow demand. We have to grow demand, and that particular train, or Amtrak for that matter, there's a station within, I think, 25 miles of anywhere in the state of Indiana. So we just have to get the people to use it. So, I mean, when gas was $4 a gallon, and nobody wants gas to be $4 a gallon, but when it was, that's when the ridership was high, especially up north in the commuter.
How can we infuse the enthusiasm to the public? Do you have any suggestions?
Well, there again, I mean, public service announcements, you know, hey, take the train. Why not take the train? But you've got so many other special interests like the gasoline, the car company, you know, the automobile industry that don't want you to take the train. So money is not going to be spent by the government to make you aware, hey, take the train. So it's just a matter of getting people on it. And again, I don't think it's going to be this generation where people are going to be willing to leave their car at home. They do in Europe. They just, you know, it's just not the way that Americans like to do things. Okay. Well, you turned the railroader loose.